Alright guys, so I just want to preface this video by mentioning that this is not a good substitute for an in-person trainer or behaviorist coming over to help you and your particular dog with any reactivity that you're seeing with your personal dog. This is just purely something to get you started, a good guide as something easy that you can start at home with your dog while you're waiting for the trainer or behaviorist to come over. There are a lot of different elements that go into working with dogs like this who are displaying these kinds of behaviors that definitely takes a more professional interaction in person to really work with. So I just want to throw that out there, make it really clear. This is just to get you guys started. I do recommend reaching out to a trainer or behaviorist in your area for more help. So now let's go ahead and jump into how you actually go about teaching this look at that behavior, engage, disengage game to your dog. It actually is a very simple behavior. Like I said before, the behavior itself looks a lot like what you're seeing here with Wrigley. Your dog is looking at the stimulus, whatever it is, something they're excited about or fearful of in the environment, and then your dog is looking back at you for guidance. Okay, that head swivel action from the stimulus back to you is the entirety of the game. It's a very simple behavior to teach. Once your dogs start to really get the game, you're going to see them start to throw it at you a lot more with things, like I said, that they're anxious about or maybe overly excited about in the environment. Like I've talked about before, you guys, instead of getting annoyed or angry at our dogs for doing stuff we don't like, I prefer to teach them what we want instead. This right here is a much more preferable behavior for me and most people to our dogs lunging and barking, trying to get at something across the street. Much nicer behavior to actually have our dogs focus on us. When you first start working with this, it's going to seem like a really counterintuitive process. Okay, what you're first going to start doing is whatever stimulus it is. Here you see we have the Roomba going. I have it in a pen so it doesn't actually leave the room or come close to Wrigley at all. But all you're going to start doing at first is I am clicking and treating her for looking at the vacuum. I know that seems really strange. Why are we clicking our dogs for looking at the thing that they used to react to? Okay, I promise it'll make a lot more sense here in a couple minutes. But step number one is click and treat your dog every single time they look over at that stimulus. So what we're doing here is actually creating a repetition and a pattern in your dog's mind. So every time they look over at the thing, for whatever reason, they get a click and a treat. Now what you're starting to see here is Wrigley's looking over at the thing and actually expecting that click to come. So she's automatically swiveling her head back at me. When she looks at the vacuum, swivels her head back to look at me. That is step 2 of this. Okay, now for your dog, depending on what you're working with, this may take a couple minutes to get, it may take a couple weeks to get, for them to actually disengage with that item, that stimulus, and actually turn their attention back to you. But now what we're working with is now instead of clicking the moment that Wrigley looks at the vacuum, I'm actually waiting for her to disengage from the vacuum and look back at me, and then that's when I'm clicking. So this next step, step 2, is waiting for that disengagement, and you're clicking that disengagement and then looking back at you. The looking back at you now earns the click and treat. Alright, so at this stage what you're going to start noticing is you're going to get a lot more attention onto you from your dog. You can absolutely reward them, click and treat them for paying attention to you, choosing to engage with you rather than the stimulus that they're working with. Okay, but you see Wrigley's much more interested in me now than the vacuum over there, because now we've kind of built up this behavior of, hey, this is just a thing that we're going to play a game with, no big deal. And she's happy to pay attention to me more so than the vacuum. So again, that kind of counterintuitive, why are we clicking our dog for looking at the thing? Well, we're actually making that thing a cue for our dogs to do something with. So there's a lot of science behind why this behavior works. I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically what we're doing is we're combining classical and operant conditioning. So we're turning something that is scary to our dogs or overly exciting to our dogs into a different meaning, which is the classical conditioning part, but we're also building in a behavior of what we would like them to do when they encounter this stimulus, which is the operant learning part of it. So you can see Leo here, he's working on a walk. we have a person down the street and he is happily working with his owners on this Engage Disengage game. He gets treats for looking at the people and looking back at his owners. You can see them walking by right there. And he is doing super well. He used to bark and lunge at people across the street from a long distance away, and you can see those people were pretty close. He's got a happy look on his face right now, happy to work for his owners. So great job to Leo on that one. Here you're going to see the same video you saw in the very beginning with Wrigley. This is a really good example of something that she's very overly excited about. She's obviously not fearful of this bunny. She wants to chase it. It is a highly prized item to her. So I can play the exact same game with her, this Engage Disengage, teaching her whenever you see a bunny, I actually want you to look back at me and tell me about it. Let me know that that bunny is there. That is much preferable to her ripping my arm off, dislocating my shoulder almost, trying to get at that bunny. So just to reiterate the steps one more time, okay, step 1, you're going to click and treat your dog for just looking at the stimulus. And yes, I mean every time they look at the stimulus. You saw the vacuum clip from earlier. I was clicking and treating Wrigley like crazy, once a second almost, for looking over at the vacuum. Then step 2, you're actually going to click for that disengagement with the stimulus and them looking back at you. Keep in mind too, this is definitely not something that you can just teach. Once your dog knows it, just ignore it. You can expect them to do it for the rest of their lives, okay? It does take a lot of reinforcement, a lot of time and practice, and a lot of maintenance as you're going forward. So randomly reinforcing them for doing this behavior to really not get back to the point where your dog is barking and lunging on leash anymore. I also want to reiterate again that if you're struggling with this with your dog and they're showing those more intense kind of reacting to the situation, whatever the stimulus is, I highly, highly recommend seeking out a behaviorist in your area, trainer in your area that can help you with this. Like I said, there is a lot that goes into a behavior like this and working with it. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it can be stressful for a lot of people. So I highly recommend looking into resources in your area. This is just a good video to get you started teaching the look at that. It's an awesome game. I use it, I teach it all the time with my clients, with my own personal dog, as you can see here. It's absolutely a game you guys can teach with your dogs at home and get them started with. Please let me know if you have any questions. Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys, how you're doing. Hope everyone has a great week. I'll see you next Thursday. Happy training.